Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is look at the correct rowing technique. So we're going to break it down into the start, the drive, the finish, and the recovery. So this first picture shows the start position. So we're looking at the shoulders slightly forwards in front of the hips, the heels down, and the arms straight. Okay, then the second phase is the drive. This is where we're going to start to push with our legs. So you want to push with your legs first, but as you do that, you need to make sure that you stay nice and tight through your upper back. Once your legs are nearly completely straight, then you're going to start to lean back with your upper body and your shoulders, and then finally you're going to pull with your arms into your chest, which leads you into the finish position, which we can see just here. So your finish position then, legs completely straight, shoulders slightly behind the hips, and the hands at the chest. Okay, so the last phase then is the recovery. So basically we're just reversing everything we've done up to this point. So we're going to let the arms go out straight first, then the upper body is going to tilt forwards, then we're going to bend the knees, and we're going to bring ourselves back to the start position again to start the next stroke. Okay, so now we can see the whole stroke together. So again, we're looking at the start position, the drive, the finish, and then the recovery. Okay, so we want to be thinking about sitting nice and tall, keeping that back nice and long throughout the stroke. Okay, that's going to help keep tension through the length of your back. Okay, we want to be focusing on driving with the legs to start the stroke, and then finishing with a strong pull to the chest. And then with the recovery, allowing the arms to go forwards and the upper body to tilt forwards before we bring the knees into the start of the stroke. Okay, so we're going to look at some common faults. So the first one here is where we slide too far forwards and we leave the shoulders behind the hips for the entire stroke. So you can see that when you come forwards, the heels are coming up. We don't want that. We want to keep the heels down flat. And as well, we're leaving the shoulders behind the hips. So basically, we're not allowing ourselves to use our hips, our glutes, or our hamstrings on the drive. We're just relying on our quads and our arms. So we're not being as effective as we can be. So we want to try and turn that around, get the shoulders forwards at the front. So another common fault then is pretty much the opposite of the last one. So here you can see where we're overreaching at the front of the stroke, try and get a little bit more distance. So while we're getting a longer pull, we're actually pushing from a weaker position. Okay, so our heels are coming up and our back is starting to get pulled into a more rounded shape. So we're not going to be in a strong position as we start to push. So we want to keep the heels down and shorten that slide. So the next fault we see is where we start to lean back too fast. So you can see the shoulders are shooting back really early as we start to push away from the rower. So we want to try and keep the shoulders slightly forwards for just a little bit longer and make sure that the legs are driving straight before we start to lean back. So remember, it's legs, then upper body, and then arms to finish the stroke. Okay, so another common fault is where we don't maintain enough tension through our back and we lose leg power by doing so. So here you can see the seat is sliding out way too fast and I'm not maintaining tension through my back. So although I'm using my legs, I'm not actually transferring that power into the handle. As I slide, the handle is actually staying still for most of the portion where my legs are straightening out. So here we're looking at when you lose tension in your upper back as you're rowing. Okay, so you can see in this video, I'm really hunched forwards and really rounded through my upper back. Okay, we want to try and keep up nice and tall and keep nice and long through your back. It's going to help transfer that power from the leg drive through to the handle, which is obviously going to spin the wheel on the rower. Okay, so we want to think about sitting up a lot taller than that, shoulders back and down. So here you're going to see me leaning way too far back at the end of the stroke. So people do this because I think they're going to get a longer stroke by leaning back, which you are going to get a couple of extra inches, but really the effort it's going to take to sit back up from that position and the time it's going to take negates any advantage of leaning back that far. So on this next clip we're looking at where you might push your knees out to try and get a little bit more space to move forwards at the front of your stroke. But you don't want to do this because if you do, you're just going to push your weight to the edges of your feet and you're not going to be able to push through the sole of your foot. So you just want to keep your feet flat down and your knees under your elbows. So here we're looking at an early arm bend. So another common fault. So it might have the tendency to pull with the elbows a little bit too soon. So you want to think about keeping the arms straight and trying to engage your lats and your back a bit more rather than pulling with the arms too early. This is another common fault I see, and it's basically where people take a little pause in the recovery phase just to gather themselves, I think, before the next stroke. But really when you're doing this, you're basically putting a little brake on the flywheel as it's spinning by stopping the stroke. So you want to keep the handle moving all the time, even if it's slowly. So try to avoid this stopping on that recovery phase. So here we're going to see a fault with the recovery phase. So here you can see that the knees are bending too early before the hands have actually passed over the knees. So the recovery phase, the arms should straighten out, then the upper body should lean forwards, and then the knees should bend. By doing it in this sequence, we'll actually help load the hamstrings and put us in a stronger position for the next stroke. Here, what I'm doing, you can see at the start of the next stroke, my shoulders are too far back and I'm not in a strong position. Okay, so now I've covered all the things you shouldn't be doing when you're rowing. Here's just a quick video of how it should look when you're rowing. Okay, so remember thinking about those different positions. So the start position with the heels down and the shoulders in front of the hips, but sitting nice and tall and the arms straight. The drive, remember pushing with the legs first, but keeping nice and tall and tight through the length of your back. So you can see as I push, the muscles across the back of my shoulders, they start to tense up, and that's just going to stop me from getting pulled forwards by the handle as I push away. Finishing that stroke, nice and straight legs and the handle in against your chest. And in the recovery phase, the hands coming forwards, then the upper body, and then the knees bending to bring us back into a strong position for the next stroke. All right, get practicing.